It started with a knock that didn't sound quite right. Not loud, not urgent, but it didn't come from the front desk bell like usual. It came from the side door. It was snowing sideways that night, wind slapping hard against the glass, the kind of cold that sinks into your bones even if you've lived in the mountains for years. The man standing there didn't say anything. He just waited. Hood, up face shadowed, one gloved hand resting on the doorknob like he wasn't sure he should be there. I buzzed him in without thinking, and I wish I'd looked a little longer before I did. Let me know where you're listening from tonight, and if you've ever had that feeling like something was just a little off. And if these stories keep you company, I'd love to have you subscribe. That way, I'll be right here for the next one. My name's Dana Ellis. I'm 56 now, but this happened when I was 37, back when I was working the front desk at a lodge in Colorado near the state line. It was a winter job, seasonal. I'd moved from Denver after a breakup, needed something quiet. The pay wasn't great, but the peace was. The lodge sat on the shoulder of a mountain that only really came alive during ski season. Outside of that, it was mostly hikers in the fall and the occasional snowmobile crew in late winter. That week in February, we had one of those strange, warm snaps. Then a fast, brutal, cold front rolled in, the kind that knocks out power and strands people for miles. The day started slow. We had 6 rooms filled, mostly couples, one family. The sort of folks who want to disconnect but still ask for Wi-Fi at check-in. By evening, the wind had picked up enough to rattle the back windows. Len Turner, our overnight maintenance guy, was already pacing the boiler room downstairs. He hated wind, said it made the pipes lie. By 9:00 p.m., the guests had all gone quiet. I'd made myself a cup of weak coffee and was counting out the drawer ready to close up the office when the side door buzzed. That's when I saw him. He wasn't dressed like a skier. No gear, no duffel bag, no snow boots. Just a long wool coat and a hat pulled low. His cheeks were red with cold but dry like he hadn't been out long. I asked if he had a reservation. He didn't answer. Just reached into his coat and pulled out a money clip. Cash, folded neatly in small bills. "We've got one room left," I said. "Number 6, corner unit." He didn't nod, didn't smile. Just slid the money across the counter and waited while I filled in the check-in card myself. Name left blank. License didn't ask. Len later teased me for not pressing harder, but it was late and something about the guy made me not want to talk. Room 6 is the furthest from the lobby. Window faces the ridge. Back then it had a wood-framed door that stuck in the cold, and a bedside lamp that flickered unless you jiggled the switch just right. He didn't ask for help with the key, didn't look at the map, just took the card and disappeared down the hall without a word. I sat back at the desk and tried to shake the weird feeling. Sometimes you get guests like that, private, grieving, running from something or someone. I've learned not to pry. Around 11:45, I started hearing it. A soft tapping, almost rhythmic, like someone flicking the edge of a ceramic mug. At first, I thought it was from the kitchen. The radiator there ticks when it's thawing. But when I went to check, it was silent. The sound kept coming in waves. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap. I followed it down the hallway past rooms 4 and 5. No TVs on, no voices, just the tapping. When I reached room 6, the noise stopped. I stood there, heart ticking faster than I'd admit, and just listened. Nothing. I didn't knock. I just turned and walked back. Back at the front desk, I marked his file, paid cash, no ID. That wasn't unusual for us. But what I did next that I hadn't done before, I opened the logbook we kept for incidentals. Just a paper ledger with guest names and room numbers. I flipped to a blank page and wrote, Room 6, 11:47 p.m., tapping sounds. The next morning, the room was quiet. No breakfast tray out, no signs of movement. At checkout time noon, I gave it a few extra minutes, then knocked. No answer. I used the staff key and stepped inside. The bed was made, not hotel-made, but neatly tucked like someone had sat on the edge but never slept there. No suitcase, no coat. Just the room key left gently on the nightstand, beside it a small white envelope, blank. Inside the envelope was a photo, black and white, faded at the edges. A little boy standing in snow, holding a dog on a leash. In the background, a building that looked almost exactly like our lodge, only older, smaller. No tower, no back wing. I turned the photo over. No date, no name. Just 3 words scrawled in pencil, he came back. I checked the cameras that afternoon. He wasn't on them. Not entering, not leaving. Room 6 had no rear exit. The hallway feed had a gap storm had knocked out the signal around midnight. I showed the photo to Len. He stared at it a long time and said, "That dog looks like the one from that fire. The one back in the 70s. I didn't know what he meant, but he wouldn't explain. Just muttered something about old guests who never checked out. We kept room 6 off bookings after that. Said it was under repair. I never saw the man again, but every now and then on snowy nights when the wind gets high enough to rattle the windows, I swear I still hear it. That soft, steady tapping, somewhere down the hall. I don't usually talk about this. It's one of those memories that makes people tilt their head and smile politely, like they're waiting for the punchline. But there isn't one. Not really. It happened when I was 16, during a family vacation in the Blue Ridge Mountains. We'd rented a small cabin not far from the parkway, the kind with creaky floorboards and no television where the quiet gets so thick you can hear your own heartbeat. My parents called it refreshing. I called it a sentence. There wasn't even a decent signal unless you stood on one foot at the end of the driveway. I brought my sketchbook, a set of headphones, and a backup battery, thinking I could at least disappear into music or draw the hours away. We'd been there 2 days already, and my boredom had turned into something restless. That morning we set out early for a hike along one of the better-known overlooks. It was cool and foggy, a kind of fog that hangs low. Quiets the birds and makes everything feel older than it should. The trail was marked well enough wooden signs with fading arrows, trail names I barely glanced at. We were maybe an hour in when I lagged behind, distracted by the roots of a tree that looked like gnarled fingers gripping the earth. I stopped to sketch them. By the time I looked up, my parents were gone. I didn't panic at first. We'd hiked together plenty, and I figured I could just follow the path and catch up. So I took the next bend. But it didn't lead to them just more trail, then a fork I didn't remember from the map. One side sloped downhill toward a darker part of the woods, the other climbed upward into heavier fog. I stood there a long time. That's when I heard the voice. "Hey, are you lost?" It wasn't a shout, more like a calm question, like someone asking for the time. I turned and saw him standing a few feet off the trail. A boy about my age, maybe a little older, wearing a faded red hoodie and cargo shorts. He had messy brown hair and a thin scar on his chin. He looked like someone I should recognize not from school or town, but a dream. The kind of familiarity that tugs at something you can't name. "I can show you the way back," he said. "Come on, it's easy." He didn't wait for a reply. Just turned and walked casual as if we'd been walking together all day. I followed. Something in the way he moved made it feel like I was supposed to. We didn't talk much. He'd glance back now and then, checking I was still there. I asked his name. He said, "Eli." When I asked if he hiked here, often he said I used to. His voice had a steady tone to it. Not rushed, not loud, just calm. The trail he took didn't look like any I remembered from the maps. The ground was firmer, the trees older. We passed a small wooden footbridge that creaked with every step, and a moss-covered stone wall that looked like it had been swallowed by the forest. He paused once to touch the bark of an old oak with initials carved deep into the trunk. "That one's mine," he said. I asked what he meant. He didn't answer. About 20 minutes in the fog began to lift. I could see light filtering through the trees ahead, and then suddenly the edge of the parking lot appeared like a mirage. My dad was near our car, pacing eyes wide when he spotted me. My mom ran up seconds later, pulling me into one of those tight, breathless hugs. They said they'd been looking everywhere, about to call the park rangers. I told them I'd gotten turned around, but someone named Eli had helped me back. "A ranger?" my dad asked. "Or another hiker?" "No," I said, "just a kid my age." I turned to point him out, but he was gone. Just trees and thinning fog. Later, back at the ranger station, my mom insisted we stop in to report the trail confusion. She wanted to make sure the signage wasn't missing or misposted. While she talked to the ranger, I wandered over to a bulletin board by the door. You know, the kind laminated notices, park rules, trail maps, and a little corner labeled "In Memory." And that's where I saw him. The photo was a little faded, probably taken 10 years earlier, but I knew that face. Same soft eyes, same scar on the chin. The caption said, "Eli Chambers, 1995-2011. Slipped near Overlook Pass. Beloved son, brother, friend." I just stared. I hadn't seen that board before. Not on the way in, not ever. I didn't know his name. I hadn't seen that photo. But there he was, the boy who walked me out of the woods. I told my parents. They said I must have seen the picture earlier and just forgotten. Stress, they said. Memory playing tricks. But I hadn't. I knew what I'd seen, who I'd followed. The ranger must have overheard because he came over calm and quiet and asked which trail I'd been on. I pointed. He looked at me a long time and said, "You're not the first." He didn't elaborate. My parents didn't ask. We left that day and never hiked that trail again. It's been over 20 years. I still think about that moment, Eli in the fog, the way he moved, how the trail didn't look like it had in the morning. I can still feel the way my chest eased when we saw the parking lot again, like the woods had finally let me go. Whatever he was, whatever he is, he knew exactly where I needed to go. And for that, I've never stopped being grateful. Back in 2018, I took my daughter on a camping trip we'd been putting off for years. I wanted to reconnect. She was 15 and already halfway to being grown. We picked a quiet site along the Appalachian Trail, not far from where we used to hike when she was little. It felt like a way to get some of those old memories back. She was excited about it more than I'd expected. We packed our old Coleman tent, 2 folding chairs, and just enough gear to feel comfortable, but not soft. We got there early Friday, parked at the ranger lot, and hiked about 2 miles up to the site. Weather was perfect, upper 60s, light breeze, dappled sunlight, cutting through tall oaks. Lily still talked the way she used to when we hiked her school, her friends, some teacher she thought was out to ruin her life. It felt easy again, like we'd hit pause on the real world. By evening, we had the tent staked and the camp stove going. The air smelled like pine needles and wood smoke. I remember sitting on the log we used for a bench, watching the light fade through the trees, while Lily roasted a marshmallow. It was one of those moments you wish you could stretch out forever. That's when he appeared. We hadn't heard him approach, just looked up, and there he was standing on the trail, maybe 30 feet away. He was in his 40s, maybe older, wearing a faded green flannel and jeans streaked with mud. His hair was greasy and stuck to his face in clumps, and he had this strange, halting walk like each step took effort. His eyes didn't focus right. They moved, but not at us, like he was scanning the air around us instead of looking anyone in the eye. "Sorry to bother you," he said. "I was just wondering, you got any water?" It wasn't the request that threw me. It was the way he said it, polite but off. Too flat. Too practiced. Lily shifted closer to me, silent. I stood up, told him I had a spare bottle in the tent. I walked back, unzipped the flap, and took out a blue Nalgene. When I handed it to him, he took it in both hands like it was a holy object. He drank fast, loud gulps, water spilling down his chin, but the whole time his eyes kept moving. Tent, cooler, Lily. Back to the tent. He was memorizing our setup. "You folks been out here long?" he asked. His voice was scratchy, like he'd swallowed dust. "Just got in this afternoon," I said. I didn't like the direction this was going. He nodded slowly, handed the bottle back. His fingers were freezing. I noticed it through the plastic. "Trails don't look the same anymore," he said. "They shift." You ever notice that Lily's hand touched my elbow? Her signal. Time to end this. We were just about to make dinner, I said. "Need anything else?" He smiled, but it didn't look real. "No," he said. "Pretty daughter. You should keep her close. Things happen in these woods." Then he turned and walked back down the trail, not the way he came, but deeper toward one of the forks that led to more remote sites. Lily didn't speak until we heard the last crunch of his boots fade into silence. Then she whispered, "Dad, he was watching me the whole time. He was pretending not to, but he was." I nodded. "I know." We ate a cold dinner. Neither of us felt much like cooking after that. I kept one ear on the trail the whole time waiting for him to come back, but he didn't. That night I laid with my back to the tent flap, listening to the forest. It took hours to fall asleep. Lily was next to me, her breathing soft but shallow, not deep sleep. Somewhere around 2:00 a.m. I woke up to footsteps, not animals, not the skitter of raccoons or the snap of branches under a deer. These were slow, deliberate human steps, circling, crunch pause, crunch pause. They passed close enough that I could hear the brush of leaves against denim. Then came the sound that still plays in my head. When it's quiet, a metal scraping dragged slowly across the rocks near the fire pit. Not aggressive, not fast, just enough to let you know someone was out there, and they weren't in a hurry. It circled the tent twice. I didn't move. I didn't wake Lily. I just stared at the nylon above me and counted the seconds between the sound and the silence. Eventually, it stopped. The forest went quiet again. Too quiet. Like everything else had gone still to avoid being noticed. I must have dozed off at some point because the next thing I knew it was morning and Lily was nudging my shoulder. "Dad," she whispered, "look outside." I unzipped the tent flap and felt my stomach drop. The dirt around our entire tent was scarred with long gouges like someone had dragged a tool, maybe a crowbar, in a slow circle around us while we slept. Near the fire pit, I saw boot prints, same size, same pattern as the man's from the night before. But this time, they were everywhere. Not just near the trail. They crisscrossed the site. Right up to the cooler, the tent, the log where Lily had been sitting. About 30 feet into the woods we found it. A makeshift lean-to, freshly made. Branches lashed with twine tucked just far enough back that we hadn't noticed it the day before. Someone had been camping within sight of us, watching. We packed faster than I thought possible, barely spoke. Lily looked over her shoulder the whole time. So did I. The hike back felt twice as long. Every twig snap made us jump. Every bend in the trail felt like a trap. We drove straight to the nearest state trooper outpost. The officer on duty, Sergeant Williams, listened to the whole story. He got real quiet when we described the man, started asking questions, had us repeat every detail. Finally, he pulled out a folder. "Kevin and Beth Turner," he said. "Missing hikers. Went off-grid 3 days ago, not far from where you were." He showed me photos. They looked happy, normal. Their tent had been found abandoned, all their gear missing. But boot prints not matching theirs had been found nearby. The man who asked us for water had been seen before, always disoriented, always friendly, then always gone. They arrested him a week later. I never found out everything, but I didn't want to. Lily won't camp anywhere without service now, and I still check the ground before I go to sleep just in case someone's out there, watching, waiting, drawing circles in the dirt. I've done field work in harsh conditions before. I've tagged wolves in Idaho and tracked elk through Colorado snow. But I've never seen anything like what happened on that trip near Eagle Summit. It was a research assignment in early spring, late March 2017. The team was based out of a prefab lab near the Yukon border, right where Alaska's higher elevations begin to flatten into scrubland, cold, windy, open terrain. The kind that makes sound travel oddly far and turns every movement on the horizon into a shape you have to squint at twice. We were working under a federal grant tracking caribou migration patterns using GPS collars. The aim was to study the herd's detours and resting sites over the course of thaw season. I was the field assistant Aaron Talbot, 30 at the time, still new enough to the program to follow orders, but seasoned enough to spot problems before they turned into paperwork. There were 5 of us on-site: Dr. Marla Sweeney, who ran the data and led the fieldwork, Doug, who handled the tech, and 2 others. Paul Reyes and Gretchen Hill, both good trackers. It was supposed to be a quiet season, but something changed in April. The first sign was our GPS board. We'd tagged 61 caribou, and most were behaving normally, drifting east, clustering at the known water access points. Then all at once, 43 of them went dark. Not staggered, not dropped signals, just gone. All within the same hour. At first, Doug thought the collars had malfunctioned, but when we checked the backup pings, we saw the same last coordinate on each a flat ridge near a dry creek bed about 7 miles out. We flew the drone out the next morning with the thermal camera, expecting to find collars strewn in the brush or damaged from weather. What we saw instead made everyone in the lab go quiet. There were no caribou, but there were 7 humanoid heat signatures evenly spaced and moving together in a perfect arc. Each was identical in size and shape, roughly 6 feet tall. The footage showed them moving in synchronization, not fast, not slow, just a steady pace over terrain too rough for easy walking. Doug replayed the video 5 times. He muted the audio, zoomed in, zoomed out. No one spoke until Dr. Sweeney finally said, "Could it be hunters?" We all knew it couldn't be. No group would walk like that. No animals, no people, not over that terrain. Paul offered to hike out the next morning. He was the strongest of us ex-military, someone who liked quiet work and didn't scare easily. He left at 8:15 a.m., carrying a day pack, a signal beacon, and a flare gun just in case. We expected radio check-ins by noon. By 1:30, we tried calling. No response. Doug tracked his beacon. It was still moving until just past 2:00 p.m. Then it blinked off. Same as the caribou collars, same location. We scrambled a follow-up team, me, Doug, and Gretchen. We took the snow truck as far as the trail allowed, then set out on foot. It was a calm, cold day, just above freezing with wind that made your skin feel thin. We reached the site around 4:45 p.m. There were no tracks, no broken branches, no dropped gear. But at the edge of the dry creek bed, just before the ridge sloped down, we found something. Paul's boots, arranged side by side on the dirt toes pointing west, laces neatly tied, but no footprints leading away. No signs of struggle, drag, or animal contact. Just the boots. And silence. I don't remember how long we stood there. The sky was beginning to darken, and Gretchen said quietly, "Do you hear that?" I held my breath. There was nothing. No birds, no wind, no small animal movement. Just the faint hum of something I still can't describe. We marked the site, flagged the GPS, and left as quickly as we could without panicking. Back at base, Dr. Sweeney looked at the beacon logs again. The final signal from Paul's tracker showed movement that matched the pattern we'd seen in the drone footage. 7 identical paths, moving as one, then stopping, then nothing. Later that week, we sent the drone back to the area. We switched to night vision. At exactly 3:12 a.m., the camera picked up the same 7 heat signatures again, in formation again moving west. No explanation, no origin. Each figure exactly the same. I didn't sleep after that. None of us did. A week later, one of the missing collars reappeared, not in the ridge or near the creek, but buried upright beneath 6 inches of dirt at our own supply outpost. Doug found it while restocking food crates. It was still active, still warm. I left the project after that. Didn't put it on my resume. Paul's file still says disappearance under investigation. His boots were shipped back to his sister in Montana. I can't explain what we saw. I don't claim to understand it. But sometimes when I wake up too early and the sky outside is still that cold shade of gray, I think about those 7 shapes, how they moved, how they never broke formation, and how nothing ever moved with them, Not the trees, not the air, not even the wind. I don't usually talk about that season, not because I'm scared to more, because I don't like the questions people ask after. And because some of those questions still don't have answers. In 2017, I worked maintenance at a seasonal resort up near Priest Lake, Idaho. Nothing fancy, half the cabins had wood-burning stoves, and the Wi-Fi only worked if you stood directly under the office roof. It was the kind of place couples booked for quiet getaways, but by the third day, they'd start asking if there was anywhere they could drive to with cell service. I was 24 then. I'd taken the job for the hiking and the free cabin. My boss, Ron, ran the night shift and lived in a trailer behind the laundry shed. It was quiet work, fixing leaks, refueling propane, resetting breakers after windstorms. The only time the place ever felt off was when Cabin 6 got booked. Not because of the cabin itself, though it was the oldest, but because of the guests who stayed there that 1 week in late October. 3 of them. 2 guys and a woman. Troy was the one who checked in. His ID said he was 33. He wore a beat-up hoodie and spoke in quiet, clipped sentences. The other 2, David and Amanda, said they were just tagging along for a birthday trip. They didn't strike me as particularly close. Amanda did most of the talking. David wandered a lot. Troy mostly sat on the cabin porch at night and stared out toward the trees. Didn't drink, didn't make noise. Just stared like he was waiting for something to come back. By the second morning, Ron mentioned something strange. Troy had asked him, "Do the doors here lock from the outside?" Ron told him no and laughed it off. But that night, I passed by Cabin 6 while heading back from the tool shed, and I saw Amanda and David standing outside, whispering. The lights were off inside, the door was closed, and Troy was nowhere in sight. The next morning, Amanda came to the office alone, said Troy had gone for a hike early and left his phone behind. She asked if we had maps of the nearby trails, but didn't seem to care which ones. When Ron asked how long he'd been gone, she just shrugged. No idea. He's weird like that. By evening, he still hadn't come back. Ron tried calling his emergency contact. The number on file didn't work. I checked the camera logs. Our system was ancient, but one camera faced the gravel trail that guests used for hikes. Troy never walked past it. When I mentioned that to Amanda, she went pale. David stepped in and said Troy probably went the other way, toward the road, maybe trying to hitch a ride. But his wallet was still in the cabin, so were his boots. Ron called the sheriff's office that night. They said they'd come by the next morning if Troy didn't show up. Only he did, sort of. At 3:14 a.m., the motion sensor by the maintenance barn went off. I was in bed but heard the alert buzz from the monitor on my wall. I looked outside, and for a second I swear I saw someone standing at the edge of the tree line. No flashlight, no jacket, just a tall, dark figure, still as stone. By the time I got my boots on and went out, no one was there. But when I checked the barn door, I found Troy's hoodie folded neatly on the step. The sleeves were damp, like it had been dragged through brush. There was a long vertical tear on the back, right between the shoulder blades. No blood, no footprints, just that hoodie and silence. The sheriff showed up around 10 a.m. Amanda and David had packed. Claimed Troy had texted them saying he was going to stay with an old friend in Spokane. They couldn't show the text. Said it had deleted itself somehow. The sheriff didn't buy it, neither did Ron. But Troy wasn't a minor, and we didn't have any evidence of a crime. The only thing the sheriff found odd was how Amanda flinched when He asked if Troy had been acting afraid of someone. She said, no. He was just tired. After they left, Ron told me to deep clean the cabin. When I got there, it still smelled like wood smoke and cheap cologne. Troy's toothbrush was missing, so was one sock. Everything else, phone, wallet, trail, permit, was untouched. In the trash outside, I found something I've never told anyone about. A crumpled paper napkin from the Lodge restaurant. On it, in blocky, slanted handwriting, were the words, "They close the door when you sleep." I still don't know what that means, but I kept the napkin. It's in my glove box now, wrapped in plastic. I don't really know why. Sometimes when I wake up too early, and everything outside feels too still, I picture Troy standing there at the edge of the woods, looking at the cabin, like maybe he'd never left it, or maybe he hadn't even started the trip yet. I've worked a lot of jobs in my life, but the quietest one, the one that still wakes me up sometimes, was at a mountain inn just past mile marker 92 off the Blue Ridge Parkway. I started in 2010 after my divorce. The place was small, 12 rooms total, 3 of them usually empty due to repairs or mold. Tourists came mostly for leaf season or anniversaries. The rest of the year we had hikers, long-haul bikers, or older couples trying to unplug. The manager was a man named Hank. He ran the place during daylight and lived up the ridge in a brown clapboard house with a metal roof that pinged when it rained. I took the evening and overnight shifts, answering the phone, setting out muffins for breakfast, and checking late guests in. Most nights were dull. I didn't mind. But there was one night early October that still doesn't sit right. Not because anything happened exactly, but because I still don't know what I saw. It started with a last-minute booking. A woman named Elena called around 7:45 p.m., asking if we had anything available. Her voice was soft-clipped. She said she was coming from Asheville, but didn't say why she was headed this way. I offered her room 3A. Queen bed upstairs, corner unit with a partial view of the trees. She said that was fine, and said she'd arrive around 9. She didn't ask about the rate, didn't ask about amenities, just said she'd be there before dark if she could. She arrived just after 9:20. Gray sedan, no bumper stickers back seat, packed with boxes and a long garment bag. She was maybe late 30s, dark hair tied back, wore a loose green coat that looked 2 sizes too big. She didn't come into the lobby, just stood by the car until I waved her in. I handed her the form and room key. She filled everything out without speaking, then looked up and asked one question. "Does the room have a balcony?" I told her no, none of them did. Just exterior hallways and a shared fire escape. She nodded slowly, said thank you, and walked up the stairs. Didn't ask for help with bags. Didn't come back down. At 10:07, the motion light outside room 2B came on. That's one of the closed rooms. Used to be a single king room, but had a warped floor and a leak in the ceiling. No one had been in it since April. The light shouldn't have come on. I went outside, saw nothing on the walkway, but the door to 2B was ajar just slightly. The key was still in my drawer, so I stepped over, nudged it open, and flipped the switch. The light didn't come on. The bed was made, though I hadn't made it. There was a mug on the nightstand, ceramic white, from our breakfast set, still warm. Steam curled off it even though it was maybe 50 degrees outside. No one was there, no footprints on the carpet, no sign of dust disturbed on the dresser, except one spot, a long curved smear, like someone had drawn their finger in a circle over and over again. I left the mug, shut the door, and told myself maybe Hank had come in during the day and forgot to mention it. Maybe he'd let someone stay in there for a night, a friend, someone passing through. But when I asked him the next morning, he shook his head. Nope, that room's off limits. No one's been in there for months. At noon, I checked the mug. It was gone. So was the circle on the dresser. That night, Elena didn't come down. I went to knock on her door around 9:30 to offer extra towels. No answer, but I could hear movement, not walking, more like shifting, like someone was slowly dragging something heavy across the floor. I leaned in, started to call her name, and then the sound stopped. Sharp, immediate, as if whoever was inside had been listening for my voice. I backed away and left the towels on the handle. Didn't sleep much after that. Around 2:47 a.m., the security monitor flickered. The one for the hallway near 2B. I glanced at it half asleep and saw a woman standing there. Long green coat, hair down. But the face was blurred, not pixelated, just out of focus, like the camera lens had fogged only at that one spot. She stood there for almost a full minute. No movement, no blink. Then turned and walked not back to the stairs, but straight into the wall between rooms. And vanished. I rewound the footage. It wasn't there. Only the motion alert, no image, no recording. Just that red indicator blinking on and off like a heartbeat. I checked Elena's room at dawn. She was gone. Sheets untouched. Key left in the door. Boxes still in her car. Trunk closed. Doors locked. Hank called the sheriff around 9 a.m. Deputy Calvin came by and opened the trunk. Inside was nothing but rocks. Smooth gray river stones neatly stacked in rows, each one marked with a small hand-painted number. No clothes, no food, just stones. We never heard from Elena again. No record of her card going through. No registration form, it had vanished from the drawer. Even the coffee mug from 2B, the one I'd seen, was never found again in inventory. The only thing left was the green coat, folded on the walkway outside the maintenance closet 3 days later, soaked from a storm that hadn't hit us yet. I don't usually think about Montana when people ask me where I've been. Most of the time I leave it out, not because I dislike the place, but because of one night that never left me. Back in 2009, I was driving west for work, a long stretch of sales calls that had me living out of my car more than my own house. I'd driven too far that day, missed my turn for Missoula, and by the time I realized it, the highway had gone dark and quiet. I saw a hand-painted sign on the shoulder that read simply, "Rooms available." It pointed toward a gravel road that looked more like a driveway than a turnoff. The inn was a squat building, wood siding gone gray from too many winters, with a faded neon sign that buzzed weakly over the entrance. Only one letter still glowed, an orange O. The rest flickered like they were giving up. I was tired enough not to care. Inside, the front room smelled faintly of pine cleaner and something older, maybe damp carpet. The woman behind the counter looked surprised to see me, like she didn't expect anyone that late. Her hair was pinned back, neat but dated, and her glasses caught the weak light overhead. She slid a ledger toward me, not a computer, just a lined book with names written in slanting script. "You'll be in room 5, she said. Her voice was calm, but she didn't meet my eyes. I carried my bag down a short hallway, The doors were numbered with little brass plates, tarnished and dull. When I passed room 4, I noticed light seeping out from beneath the door, too steady, too cold, almost bluish. I didn't think much of it until I reached my room and found that my own light switch didn't work at first. It flickered before catching. The room was plain: one bed with a quilt, a dresser with a scratched mirror, a lamp that leaned to one side. Nothing out of the ordinary except that it felt as though someone had just left. The air wasn't stale, but faintly warm, like breath, still lingered. I unpacked as little as I could, washed up, and lay down, telling myself I'd leave before sunrise. It must have been close to 2 in the morning when I heard it. Not footsteps exactly, something more like pacing back and forth, steady and deliberate. The sound came from the other side of my wall, from room 4. I sat up, listening. The boards creaked in the same rhythm for nearly half an hour, then stopped all at once. I tried to sleep again, but that kind of silence doesn't let you rest. Around 3, I heard a knock, soft measured, not at my door, but at the one next to me. 3 knocks, then nothing. A pause, then 3 more. I held my breath. I thought maybe another guest had arrived late, but no one spoke. No footsteps moved down the hall, and the knocking didn't shift doors. It stayed at room 4. The next morning, I walked out to find the innkeeper sitting at the desk with a cup of tea. I mentioned the late-night noise, trying to sound casual. She froze for a moment, then said, "No one checked into room 4. Her hand tightened around her cup until it rattled against the saucer. I asked if she was sure, and she nodded quick and final, like she wanted the conversation ended. I didn't push. I packed my bag, turned in my key, and walked out without breakfast. As I loaded my car, I glanced once more at the hallway window above me. A curtain shifted just slightly, like someone had been standing there watching me leave. I got in my car and drove, not looking back again. To this day, I don't know what I heard pacing in that room, and I don't ask questions when I travel anymore. That was the last one I'll share tonight. Looking back across all of these stories, I keep coming back to the same thought. None of these places were special. Not the motels, not the gas stations, not the side roads or quiet towns. They were just the kinds of places people pass through without thinking. Places that don't even make it onto postcards. And maybe that's what makes them dangerous. Because it's easy to forget that wrongness doesn't always hide in dark legends or famous haunted spots. Sometimes it waits in the quiet corners of the map, the places no one pays attention to. The truth is, I don't know what's worse. The thought that these moments were ordinary and explainable, or the possibility that they weren't. Either way, they linger. They stay with you long after you've gone home, and they make the world feel just a little less steady under your feet. So the next time you stop for gas in the middle of nowhere, or check into a room that smells too clean, or walk past a door where the light doesn't look right, remember, some places never forget who passed through. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. If you'd like to hear more stories like these, please follow the channel. Share it with someone who enjoys late-night listening, and subscribe for the nights still ahead. And tell me, have you ever stayed somewhere that felt wrong, even if you couldn't explain why? Good night.